And now the final speaker at the Conservative Political Action Conference, first-term Florida Congressman Allen West. This is just over 30 minutes.
If you guys keep standing up and singing, I might not, and clapping, I might not make this 7 o'clock flight. But it really is a great honor to be here. Thank you so much, Chairman Keene. But before I get started, there's a special young man that has come up on this stage with me. His name is Sergeant Jason Aubin from Annandale, Virginia. He has served in Iraq with the 2nd Infantry Division during the time period of the surge. He now serves at the 3rd Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard, where he now trains those men and women who guard the tomb of the unknown soldier. So, before I say a word, I want to introduce to you one of America's best, Sergeant Jason Aubin.
Thank you. We don't have much time. Can I just say something real quick? The reason I'm here is because I have a bigger fear for my future than I did of the fear that I had back in Baghdad. And the reason I'm here is because I believe in the Colonel. So thank all of you, and God bless America.
To Chairman Keene, incoming Chairman, Mr. Cardenas, it's awesome to see another South Floridian here. And to each and every one of you out there, what a year it has been. And congratulations, because your hard work and efforts paid off. Thanks to your calls, your walks, and standing on street corners waving flags and signs, we have a GOP House majority. Within that House majority, we have the largest ever conservative conference that they have ever seen. And also, we have 87 new freshmen, a historic achievement that you enabled to happen. And you also closed the gap in the U.S. Senate. You made your voices heard and have reminded Washington, D.C. that this is a representative democracy made up of the consent of the governed. You endured the relentless and hostile attacks from the liberal left, such as being called racist. And perhaps they should see who is standing here as your keynote speaker. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But the thing was, you stood by your principles. In the face of these horrific politics of character assassination, you said that you would not allow your country to be cast into a perpetual dusk, nor remain silent while the sun set on the ideals of American exceptionalism. And I, too, had to endure the politics of ugliness, because the liberal progressive agenda offers no viable solutions for our republic. Countless name-calling, saying that you're a member of an all-white motorcycle gang, being called the worst person in the world 5 or 6 times, and he got fired for it. Having your personal friends, such as a very dear friend of mine, South Florida radio talk show host Joyce Kaufman, attacked. The DCCC has already started running attack ads against me, and I've barely been sworn in about 35 days. The Cook Political Report said I was one of the most vulnerable congressmen even before I had been sworn in. And this past week, the Politico put me out as one of the top most vulnerable representatives. Well, I got to tell you something. Standing here before each and every one of you, I don't feel so vulnerable, do I? But how is it? How is it that we, in this past year, stood against such a vile onslaught? It's very simple. I go to Isaiah chapter 54 and verse 17, where it states, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord." That's where faith comes into being so important. But even more important than your faith, as Mr. King talked about, it's an oath. It's an oath that each and every one of us believe in. It's an oath that I took for the first time on the 31st of July, 1982, as a young second lieutenant back at the University of Tennessee. It's an oath, go Rocky Top. It's an oath that I took again on the 5th of January of 2011. It's an oath that has no statute of limitations. It's an oath that we pledge, such as Sergeant Auburn, that we will lay down our lives for this great constitutional republic. See, last year on this stage, I gave the oath to be a guardian of the conservative principles and values that make America the greatest nation that the world has ever known. But today, as we have gathered here on this day, on this momentous occasion, I believe that we are standing on the verge of the dawn of a new America if we adhere to those fundamental conservative principles and those constitutional ideals. See, conservatism is the interaction between life, society, and governance to promote the advancement of the individual by adhering to the basic constitutional republic principle of liberty. Alexis de Tocqueville said, "While democracy seeks equality in liberty, socialism seeks equality in restraint and servitude." Abraham Lincoln once asked the question, "What is conservatism? Is it not the adherence to the old and tried against the new and untried?" Well, I would say this, if President Lincoln was standing here today: liberal progressivism evolved after our Constitution. It has been tried. It has repeatedly failed all over the world. So why would we think that it can be successful here in our United States of America? Thank you. So here today, let us be reminded of the pillars of conservatism, which will lead us to the new dawn of a new America. The first one is very simple. It is effective and efficient constitutional government. For Thomas Jefferson said, "My reading of history convinces me that most bad government results from too much government." Therefore, let me ask you a simple question. Do you believe that America can survive as a bureaucratic nanny state? No. And you're absolutely correct. And I appreciate the emphasis over there. The framers of our Constitution, they had one true intent, was to put a restraining order on big government. See, fiscal conservatism is a derivative of constitutional government, which understands its right and proper mandates. And that's why next week we're going to cut $100 billion of spending off of the federal budget. We cannot continue on with the record deficits that we have seen in the past 3 years. $1.42 trillion, $1.29 trillion, $1.48 trillion, approaching a $15 trillion debt, $5 trillion of new debt in the past 4 years. We cannot continue with a public sector that is outpacing the private sector. We cannot continue in an America where we are making more and more people wedded to government, either by subsistence check or by employment check, where we are creating more victims and making people more dependent upon government. That has to end, and the hard decisions come right now. We cannot continue on with the policies of behavior modification through excessive taxation and overburdensome regulation. And that's why we're going to be cutting from the EPA. Thank you. Thank you. The wasteful stimulus spending, the federal bailouts, which leads to the nationalization of production, automobile industry, finance industry, healthcare. If healthcare is so great, then someone explain to me why over 200 Democrat political groups are going to the president and asking for waivers. I say this to the president: the good things in the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, closing the donut hole, making sure that we take care of people with the pre-existing conditions, keeping people on our young kids on our insurance. I can probably fit that in 5 to 10 pages. It's the other 2,490 pages with 11 new taxes, 159 new government agencies and bureaucracies, and 16,000 new IRS agents that the United States of America does not want. Thank you. We're tired of failed gimmick policies like cash for clunkers. And then I just found out today that we're going to have cash for plug-ins, which will be announced on Monday, where the government will hand out checks for $7,500 for people that buy electric cars. Once again, Mr. President, did you hear the American people? 2008. Why did we have a financial meltdown? Go back and study the Community Reinvestment Act. When government all of a sudden gets into the mortgage industry, when we create an agency like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, when we lower down the standards for lending, when we get rid of Glass-Steagall, and we now start to securitize our mortgages, and we sell off bag mortgages throughout our own financial industry and overseas. If government gets out of the way of the private sector, it would not have happened in 2008. As I sat at the State of the Union address and I heard the president use these words, investment and innovation, those words are not part of the public sector lexicon. Those words are part of the private sector. They are part of our free market. They are part of our free enterprise, which promotes ingenuity. Through the private sector is where we will have long-term sustainable economic growth, job growth, financial certainty, predictability, and viability, not from President Obama's version of investment. It comes from your investment, and that's what we must set the conditions for. See, the dawn of a new America means that we must listen to the words of Abraham Lincoln when he said, "You cannot escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today." Now is the time to reform our individual tax code. Now is the time to cut our corporate business tax rate from 35% down to 20%. Now is the time to eliminate capital gains taxes and dividends taxes. Now is the time to cap federal spending at 18 to 20%. Now is the time to develop a balanced budget amendment. Now is the time Thank you. Thank you. Now is the time to eliminate redundant, failed, and duplicitous federal government programs and agencies. Make the hard decisions. We must implement fiscal responsibility that's based upon the constitutional role of the federal government. And I say we start looking at every government program and agency that has been created in the last 10 years, and let's start making some hard examinations. Now is the time. The second important pillar in our conservative principles is peace through vigilance, through resolve, and through strength. A new America means that we must remember the words of Sir Edmund Burke when he said, "All that is required for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." Sun Tzu tells us in the book The Art of War to know your enemy and to know yourself and to know the terrain or the environment. In countless battles, you will always be victorious. Peace begins with courageous leaders who are willing to identify and define our enemy and their objectives, because political correctness has no place in our national security strategy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. See, I find it appalling that someone such as Major Malik Nadal Hassan can gun down American soldiers, and we treat that incident like workplace violence. So let me be clear. Truth is not subjective, and facts do not lie. And those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. A new America, a secure America, means that we can ill afford to have a 21st century Sir Neville Chamberlain moment. Yesterday we witnessed a historic moment in Egypt. And I applaud the flames of freedom finding its way into this Arab nation. However, let us be reminded of the lessons of the revolution in Iran. Let us also remember that there was a certain group that came into Afghanistan after the Soviet Union departed, and that country fell into civil war. That same group promised to bring in civil society and stability. That same group was recognized by the Clinton administration, even had their foreign minister brought here and hosted in the White House. That group was named the Taliban. History has a way of teaching you a very bad lesson if you don't pay attention. See, many cheered the departure of Hosni Mubarak, but I would have much rather seen the departure of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad and the end of the rule of the theocrats in Iran. Thank you. A weak America has never proven good for the world. We must ensure that our men and women in combat have clear objectives, the tools for victory, and the rules of engagement which enable them to seize and maintain the initiative from the enemy. And yes, I do have a problem with granting American constitutional rights to terrorists while we attempt to and have imprisoned our own warriors for killing terrorists. Thank you. Thank you. The dawn of a new America means this: secure our borders and enforce our laws. Recognize the emerging threats on the Korean Peninsula. Recognize the threats that are coming out of South and Central America. and confront the radical Islamic, non-state, non-uniform belligerents who transit freely across borders, killing and promoting a 7th century ideology that is anathema to the values of America and to Western civilization. Thank you. A new dawn for America means never surrendering our nuclear deterrent capability due to a naive trust of those who subscribe to Machiavelli, not Kumbaya. It means recognizing that our economic strength is part of our national security and that China is still a communist country which is using capitalism as a weapon against us. And never allowing anyone to believe that our greatest ally in the Middle East, Israel, shall not have this nation ready to stand with her. It means, and I say this to my friends in the state of Israel, I say this to Devorah Hoffman, I say this to Mark Kahlberg and his family, I shall never let Israel down. Thank you. Thank you. Now, there's a third pillar. There's a third pillar in many ways. I believe that this is the most important pillar for the dawn of a new America, and that is to never abandon our values. This may be a hot topic here at C.P.A.C, but without this critical third pillar, we are incomplete as an American people. We must honor our language and realize that it is the most important, most basic, and common bond which makes us an American. I believe that we should celebrate the diversity of the melting pot called America, but never allow multiculturalism to grow on steroids and define itself as making American culture subservient. Because yes, there is a definitive American culture. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We must respect and honor the unborn. And I want you to tell me this. Tell me this. What kind of person would support legislation that states that an American child that survives a late-term abortion procedure does not deserve to live? I will never support late-term abortion or the use of abortion as birth control because I do not believe that having a baby is punishment. Thank you. Thank you. We must hold sacred the privilege of the institution of marriage as a bond between a man and a woman to promote the promulgation of our society, because we cannot allow the destruction of the American family. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan talked about this. He said the folly of breakdown of the American family will once come and haunt the United States of America. And why is that important? Because if you break down the American family, that leads to government dependency, which leads to the growth of government, which leads and results in greater government spending. The strength of America is in the strength of the bonds of the American family. When America expanded westward, it were men and women with their children and wagons going across the Mississippi River and spreading this great nation. Do not ever forget the bond of this great nation. If we are to have a new dawn in America, it means reclaiming our Judeo-Christian faith heritage. John Adams said, "We have no government armed with power, capable of contending with human passions, unbridled by morality and religion. Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." This is not about a separation of church and state. It is about making sure that we do not separate faith from the individual. You must never forget that the American motto is, "In God we trust." We in America, we welcome the beliefs of others in America, but our coexistence must be based on a simple premise. When tolerance becomes a one-way street, it leads to cultural suicide. And American cultural values shall never be subjugated to any other as long as I have air in my lungs. In tribute to President's Day and Black History Month, let me share these closing thoughts. We are either a united people or we are not. If the former, let us in all matters of general concern act as a nation which has national objects to promote and a national character to support. If we are not, let us no longer act a farce by pretending to it. George Washington. America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. Abraham Lincoln. We stand on the precipice of greatness for this nation. But if we forget what brought us to where we are in 234 years, if we forget these three pillars, there will be no America to pass on to subsequent generations. And so I want to close with this little simple story. On the 7th of February, 1961, Herman Sr. and Elizabeth Thomas West had a son. My parents were nicknamed Buck and Snooks. Their son grew up walking the streets of the old 4th Ward in the inner city of Atlanta, Georgia. He attended an elementary school that was located right across the street from Ebenezer Baptist Church. He would go down and fish with his father and his grandfather and catch crappie and brim just south of Cuthbert, Georgia, Randolph County, in Lake Eufaula. He would pick peaches to help out his grandparents and others who were selling peaches on these little sideway stores in Peach County, Georgia, Fort Valley. He climbed pecan trees, and I say pecan because that's how I was brought up to say it. It's called pecan down south. I don't know where you guys got this pecan. But I used to go up and climb those pecan trees down in Camilla, Georgia, Mitchell County, because my old mother wanted always to have some fresh pecans so she could make a nice pecan pie. He grew up selling Cokes at the old Atlanta Fulton County Stadium and cheering on the Atlanta Braves. On Saturday, he learned all of the tunes to the SEC fight songs. But on Sunday, he was an acolyte, and he sang in the church youth choir. He went off to serve his country, just the same as his father had done in World War II. His older brother had done in Vietnam. His father-in-law had done in Vietnam. his nephew has done in Afghanistan, and his brother-in-law has done in Iraq. And he stood on the wall to tell his country, sleep peacefully at night, because this man stands ready to do the violence and do the things that are necessary to protect you. Now, on this day, 50 years later, this son of America stands before you on this grand stage, committing himself to his country, to its national objects, to its national character, to its fiscal and national security, to the preservation of the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of every American. I do it for my wife. I do it for my daughters. I do it for my relatives. I do it for my friends. I do it for the men and women in uniform. I do it for the little boy and the little girl who are wearing a high school junior ROTC uniform just like I did at Henry Grady High School. I do it for that unborn American child. I do it for each and every one of you who hear my words. I do it by pledging a sacred oath to the dawn of a new America, and to the liberal press, who I'm sure will be putting out all of their pieces, and they will be attacking me starting today, tomorrow, and of course on Monday. Continue your attack, because this is what Abraham Lincoln said. Be sure you put your feet in the right place, then stand firm. So as you depart here today from this great hall, from this great gathering of conservatives, this is the commission that I send you out with. Stand firm, for this is the dawn of a new America. God bless you all. God bless America, steadfast and loyal. Thank you.